In this township my whole life, my purpose clear. But now I would risk everything, my life, my ministry, my soul, just to spend a few moments alone with you.
Demi Moore and Gary Oldman fight the temptation of a forbidden love, but not very hard, in a new version of the American classic, The Scarlet Letter, updated for the 1990s. It's one of 5 new movies we'll be reviewing this week on Siskel and Ebert, along with Linda Fiorentino and David Caruso in the new thriller Jade, and also Harvey Keitel, Roseanne, and Madonna in an improvised comedy. I'm Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times.
And I'm Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune. Our first film is The Scarlet Letter, and right away I'm going to have to object to its happy ending, which is miles away from the original ending in the classic novel by Nathaniel Hawthorne. I just don't think you can play this fast and loose with classics. Demi Moore stars as the married Hester Prynne, who arrives in puritanical Massachusetts in 1666 without her husband, and immediately is excited at the sight of the local preacher bathing in the nude, another plot point not in the book. After hearing his sermon, they meet once again.
It's rare for a man so young to speak with such force of passion.
Well, for some reason, I felt most inspired today.
That's Gary Oldman as the Reverend Arthur Dimmesdale, and soon he and Hester acknowledge the intensity of their feelings.
Say something to end it, for I've not the power.
After hearing reports that her husband, upon arriving in America, was killed by Indians, Hester cannot delay acting out her love for the Reverend. Hester ends up having a baby and is soon censored by the town leaders.
Mistress, if you do not speak out the name, you must wear upon your bodice this symbol of your sinful fornication.
Actually, the best character in the film is a supporting player. Joan Plowright plays Mistress Hibbins, accused of being a witch, but she merely senses the passion in Hester.
But I can see what others cannot. Be accursed, to be sure. But I know the hearts of men.
The rest of the movie, however, holds our attention only for a little while with Demi Moore's passion, but then the filmmakers really twist Hawthorne's story like a pretzel. As writer Douglas Day Stewart has to find a way to bring about a more upbeat ending. Whole scenes are invented involving nudity and Indian attacks and the life and death of central characters. In so doing, a landmark novel becomes a conventional movie. The more I thought about it, this movie is closer to Pretty Women than the real Scarlet Letter.
You know, from a Hollywood point of view, the problem with Nathaniel Hawthorne's novel is that it begins after the adultery is already over, which is kind of like, it's kind of like telling Salome's story after she puts the veils back on. And so, of course, they go back for all of that soft-core stuff that looks like it comes out of a Playboy video. And another thing that really bothers me, in the novel, it's the Reverend Dimmesdale who is really the hypocrite. Not only did he father the child, but he fans up the local protest against this woman as a way of kind of concealing his own guilt. And in this movie, they make him more of a kind of a regretful bystander. This movie has no sense of sin, no sense of guilt. It's just kind of a propaganda film for letting it all hang out in puritanical New England.
I never thought I'd say this, but actually, Cliff Notes, you know, the crib sheets that people would read when they were assigned books like The Scarlet Letter in high school, that's more valuable than this movie.
Not only is this film not The Scarlet Letter, it's really not much of anything else either. Okay, our next movie is one of the entries this weekend in the 33rd Annual New York Film Festival. It's called The Celluloid Closet, and it's an amusing and perceptive documentary about homosexuals in the movies during nearly a century. For many of those years, of course, it was forbidden by the production code to show homosexual behavior on the screen, but filmmakers got around that with carefully coded performances showing characters who might not be identified as gay, but many audience members could break the code and understand the gay references. There were, for example, lots of characters who were known as sissies, and actor-playwright Harvey Fierstein remembers some of them.
My view has always been visibility at any cost. I'd rather have negative than nothing. That's just my particular view, and also because I am a sissy.
Then there were women characters who look today a lot like lesbian stereotypes, although at the time they were disguised as vampires.
Do you like jewels, Lily? This is very old and very beautiful. I'll show it to you.
Or vamps.
May I have this? Of course.
Or simply very possessive, sinister forces like Mrs. Danvers in Hitchcock's Rebecca.
Feel this. It was a Christmas present from Mr. De Winter. He was always giving her expensive gifts, the whole year round. I keep her underwear on this side.
The Celluloid Closet is not an angry or particularly political film. It's more of a movie lover's trip to a chapter of film history that until recently has been invisible or ignored. If you didn't catch it, or you're not going to catch it at the New York Film Festival, it will air on HBO on January 30th and then be released theatrically a couple of weeks later.
I think it's a better film maybe than you think. I think it's an important picture, and I think there is some anger in the picture, particularly in the last section of the film when it deals with portrayals of gays labeled as gays from the 70s through today. And that is that they're hateful portrayals, basically. It is only in just the last couple of years that we're getting anything that is approaching humanism in portraits of gays. The picture also, I think, is significant another way. It shows how you can take footage from films and put together a piece of cultural history that is absolutely fascinating. You could now, I think other groups can take a look at this picture based on Vito Russo's book, Celluloid Closet, and say, we can tell our story too through the movies.
Yeah, we can look at our story.
It's terrific.
Because it is true that once they started showing gays on the screen, they started showing them mostly in negative ways, as killers, as perverts, as serial murderers, and so forth.
Yeah, Cruising with Al Pacino is a case in point. I mean, that's a hateful film.
Okay, coming up next, a beautiful psychologist enjoys a double life that involves kinky sex and leads to murder in Jade.
Freeze it right there. Magnify it. Mrs. Gavin, is that you on the tape?
Called yourself Jade? You never used Medford's house as a place of business?
Look, why don't you bring that girl on the tape in here? She'll tell you I'm not this person she's talking about.
The girl on the tape is dead.
Linda Fiorentino is a psychologist with a checkered secret life, and David Caruso plays her former boyfriend, an assistant DA investigating the murder of a wealthy man in Jade, William Friedkin's film that is so convoluted in its story that you end up giving up following it and are merely left feeling voyeuristic as you endure the kinky sex scenes. Here's Fiorentino getting the news about the millionaire's murder.
Oh my God, I just saw him today.
You did?
Yes, we were talking about acquiring the new Matisse for the museum.
What happened?
We met at his house.
Fiorentino's husband is a well-connected lawyer played by Chaz Palminteri, but we have no interest in his character other than as a murder suspect as he tries to bribe Caruso.
Why don't you come downtown?
As a partner?
Eventually.
What for?
Money. Real money.
Yeah, I'm having too much fun doing what I'm doing.
There's only 3 fun things in life, Paisan. Money, sex, and power.
Another suspect in Jade, no less than the governor of California, Richard Crenna, who is about to see some incriminating photographs of himself in a sex act with a call girl.
Actually, I was hoping to see you alone.
Oh, I don't have any secrets from Bill. He not only knows where all the bodies are buried, he buries all of them himself.
Ultimately, Fiorentino herself becomes a suspect because of her sexual proclivities. Her former lover is shocked, just shocked.
How many were there?
A lot? I don't know. I lost track.
How could you let them do this to you?
They didn't do anything to me, David. It was my choice. I liked it. I was in control.
Jade is pretty much claptrap in luxurious surroundings. The only character we could possibly care about is Fiorentino's, but she is lost in the story's many twists and turns, and her sex scenes are merely inserted as turn-ons, not as any part of any serious psychological examination of personality type. Jade doesn't care that much about her. Jade is about obnoxious rich people treating each other with contempt. At the end, I didn't care who done it or whether David Caruso ever found out who did.
I didn't either, but I did want to know, and the first time I saw the movie, I didn't understand how it turned out. Now, they re-edited the last reel, and I saw the entire movie again yesterday. Now, I think I could pass a test on it, but on the other hand, it turns out that there are two solutions to two different threads of crime in the movie, and the solution to one of them makes the same mistake that another screenplay by the same writer, Joe Esterhaus, made in Jagged Edge. If you remember that movie, there's a guy dead on the floor and the camera shows him and everybody says, oh, that's who it is, but then they all say, but who was it? And in this movie, the same thing. You really have to look and think to see who that dead body is, and then you have to think real hard to figure out how it connects with anything, and then it doesn't connect with the main murder.
But Roger, you're talking about it as a mystery. At any point, did you care who anybody cared?
No, because it's all the elements. It's all the elements, but they're not assembled in terms of any kind of story or character development that involve you.
Linda Fiorentino is a good actor. She can play a psychologically deep character. Has she been given one here? No. This movie is just showing the back of her body in sex
all kinds of problems. For example, when it turns out who committed the main murder, how did that person get the other person to go along with it? That's an interesting question. How come Caruso never knew anything about Fiorentino's sexual problems when every other man in San Francisco
If you could answer every question, you still would have a worthless story. Coming up next, Harvey Keitel in Blue in the Face, a movie that uses the same locations and characters as Smoke.
I actually feel pretty comfortable in New York. I get scared like in Sweden. You know, it's kind of empty, they're all drunk, everything works.
That's underground musician Lou Reed in a scene from Blue in the Face, an intriguing new film that was shot with the same locations and a lot of the same actors as the movie from earlier this year, Smoke. That film, which we both liked, told the story of the folks who hung around a cigar store in Brooklyn. This new film is kind of like a bonus. Director Wayne Wang and writer Paul Auster used a few days after filming Smoke to make another movie, mostly improvised, in which store manager Harvey Keitel and other actors make up bits about their characters. Here, for example, Keitel with his girlfriend, Mel Gorham.
Saturday night, I promised Tommy I'd clean out his brother's apartment with him. You know, his brother Chuck. We were in the Navy together, and he died. You know what I'm saying?
I don't know what you're talking about, okay? Chuck. Who the is Chuck?
No, it was Chuck. Chuck is dead.
The movie has lots of guest stars, including Roseanne, Madonna, and in this scene, independent director Jim Jarmusch, who talks about something that has always puzzled him in old movies.
Why is it in every movie there's a shootout, and when they run out of bullets, they like click, click, they fling the gun away, like it's a disposable cigarette lighter or something. What's up with that? Guns cost a lot of money. Can't you reload it?
Seen all by itself, Blue in the Face is not a terrifically good film. It's rambling, disorganized, and very indulgent of its actors, especially the guest stars, who sometimes seem to think they're on Saturday Night Live. On the other hand, this is a fascinating companion piece to Smoke. And if you like that movie, you'll want to see this one just to see the variations and riffs on characters and situations. It's like watching the actors play after they get off work. So if you saw Smoke, I recommend this movie, and if you didn't see Smoke, I don't think you're going to get much out of it.
Well, I saw Smoke. I think it's one of the best movies of the year. Probably you're going to put it on my 10 best list, and I didn't find this picture worth very much at all. In fact, I think self-indulgent is really the word for it. The actors did go on and ramble, and Jim Jarmusch talking there. On the subject of movie cliches, our show's been a lot funnier on that subject than Jim Jarmusch is sitting there talking. Other characters come in and prattle on and really don't say anything. Only Harvey Keitel. This is interesting. Harvey Keitel is always interesting in this picture. He's the only one, I think, that stands out and is consistently interesting. You can see the other actors struggling, having to improvise, and you can see Keitel steady as a rock, playing with them and saying what he's going to say. This is a bad film. He's good in it.
But I still feel if you saw Smoke, then you would want to see this movie.
Not according to me.
Yes, you would.
I didn't like it at all.
Just for fun.
No, not for fun. When we come, I don't like to see bad movies for fun. When we come back, an epic film that updates Victor Hugo's classic, Les Misérables, is next. Our next film is something audacious and special. Unlike The Scarlet Letter, it's an adaptation of a classic, but what a difference. It's Claude Lelouch's Les Misérables, based on Victor Hugo's novel of the French Revolution, but set instead in this century, in Vichy France during the Nazi occupation. And the everyman hero of the story is a truck driver named Henri, played gloriously by Jean-Paul Belmondo, here helping a Jewish family, the Siemens, escape from the Nazis. He can't read, so in exchange, he wants them to tell him the classic French story of Les Misérables.
Je voudrais surtout que vous me parliez de Jean Valjean, pareil que je ressemble.
Vous savez, dans ce livre, tout le monde se ressemble. Dans ce livre, on croise des gens qu'on connaît depuis toujours.
Emboldened by the story, Henri decides to do good and enrolls the Siemens' daughter in a convent, where she'll be safe, he hopes. Henri also risks his life in battle, as director Lelouch, following Victor Hugo, makes the point that the existence of good in the world depends on the individual actions of individual people. Claude Lelouch's Les Misérables has the epic quality of its source material in both its grand and intimate scenes. Here, the director indicts the French who assisted the Nazis as Jewish prisoners are forced to prostitute themselves at an officer's party.
Vous êtes français?
Oui.
Alors pourquoi cet uniforme?
Oh, parce que les Allemands aiment bien honorer les bons Français.
C'est avec vous que je dois passer la nuit?
Ben, si vous voulez survivre à cette guerre, ça me semble plus raisonnable.
J'aurais préféré que vous soyez allemand.
Moi aussi.
This Les Misérables tries to deal in a poetic way with the shabbiest of episodes in French history, the French collaborators who sold out their brethren in World War II. By using the almost sacred text of Victor Hugo's novel, Lelouch couldn't be more audacious, but Lelouch triumphs because he is in total emotional control of this great story. Indeed, I think he pumps new life into Victor Hugo's novel, paying homage to its universal themes and challenging us to do likewise. I was thoroughly impressed with and entertained by this new Les Misérables, a candidate also, I think, for one of the year's best films.
I thought it was a very, very strong film and very inventive in its structure, too. Belmondo plays either 3 or 4 characters in the movie, including there are lots of scenes that are flashbacks to the time and characters of Les Misérables, because as the story is told, we see those characters, and of course, Belmondo, the truck driver, imagines himself as Jean Valjean, the hero of Les Misérables. And then it's because of the lessons he learns from Hugo that he knows how to behave in the present day. When he has moral questions that he has to answer during the war in France, he does what the good people in Hugo's novel would have done.
The importance of Les Misérables in France can't be measured. And so I mean, he's setting himself up for a great fall, but he makes a great piece of work.
It's a very good film. Coming up next, a special report on a national tour by the Library of Congress of some very important films.
I had that bum all figured out. He had a good left hand, you know what I mean?
This Siskel and Ebert special report is brought to you by Orville Redenbacher's Gourmet Popping Corn, the best part of the movies.
Earlier this week, I went to Madison, Wisconsin for the kickoff of a national tour for a package of restored films sponsored by the Library of Congress. The purpose of the tour, which will eventually visit all 50 states, is to call attention to the issue of film preservation, which is difficult and expensive, but necessary because unless they're cared for, old movies can slowly disintegrate until their images are lost to us forever. I spoke to an audience of avid moviegoers at the Madison Civic Center about one of my favorite movies on the tour. One of the most famous sets ever constructed was the War Room in this movie. Remember the great line, "You can't fight in here"? This is the War Room. That's right, Stanley Kubrick's Dr. Strangelove from 1963, a satirical classic that holds up well but was in danger of destruction, believe it or not, before it was restored.
General Turgidson, I find this very difficult to understand. I was under the impression that I was the only one in authority to order the use of nuclear weapons.
Another film was one of the earliest movies ever made, The Great Train Robbery from 1903. More than half of all silent films ever made no longer exist. I talked with Patrick Lockney, curator of film programs for the Library of Congress, about the challenge of film preservation.
West Side Story, for example, is rumored to have preservation problems. All the film prints that are known to exist now that date back to the release of the film are faded beyond recovery. And archivists I know of have not been able to locate any non-faded film prints, so the preservation of that film is not known.
Orson Welles once told Peter Bogdanovich that movies are like pieces of time, and it's good to know that some of that time is being preserved. Now let's take another look at the movies we reviewed this week. 2 thumbs down for The Scarlet Letter, an absurd attempt to turn Nathaniel Hawthorne's classic novel about sin and repression into a modern story about sex and romance. 2 thumbs up, though, for The Celluloid Closet, a documentary that traces homosexual characters and themes in movie history. It's amusing, it loves movies, and it has a point to make. 2 thumbs down for Jade, the confusing movie that seems to have all of the pieces of a slasher thriller, but can't seem to fit them together. 2 thumbs down for Blue in the Face, made with the same actors and locations as Smoke. And finally, 2 thumbs up for Claude Lelouch's virtuoso film Les Misérables. It opens next week in New York, L.A., and Toronto. So, Les Misérables?
Yes.
Good film in the Celluloid Closet, too.
2 terrific films. That's it for this week. Next week, we'll be back with reviews of more new movies, including Get Shorty, starring John Travolta, Gene Hackman, and Danny DeVito in a gangland comedy based on the bestseller by Elmore Leonard.
So you make movies, huh?
I produce feature motion pictures.
I got an idea for a movie.
Doesn't everybody?
And also, Now and Then, a nostalgic coming-of-age story featuring a cast of young actresses, including Christina Ricci, and also cameos by Demi Moore, Melanie Griffith, and Rosie O'Donnell. That's next week, and until then, the balcony is closed.
Trio 3-way outdoor protection, Pamba-free sunscreen, natural insect repellent and moisturizer, and an herbal-scented formula. Protect your family from Lyme disease with Trio. Remington's Triple Foil, the only shaver with 3 narrow microscreens designed for those hard-to-shave places. If you can grow it, we can shave it. Remington Triple Foil. Finally, a panty that won't go where it shouldn't. A panty that actually stays in place from Fruit of the Loom. Clothes that make you feel good. Unscented Lever 2000, the mildest deodorant soap, so it's best for your skin, even the most sensitive skin. Unscented Lever 2000.